watching India Today. I am Preeti Chaudhary. So the moot question, why is it essential to gauge the gross domestic behavior of India? While we may have ways, means to measure economic growth of our country, and India is moving towards superpowerdom on that measure, India may be positioning itself to become the world's third largest economy with a projected GDP, gross domestic product, at $7 trillion, or roughly rupees 581 lakh crore by 2030. But its social fabric does not show such forward movement. And the making of a great nation's viewers is not just economic power. With it needs to come a strong civic consciousness, social correctness, exemplary public behavior. And sadly, while we are zipping on the economic highway, our socio-civic growth has been riddled with potholes. It's that one uncomfortable truth that could well prove to be a dark undertow, a less than perfect civic conscience. To assess exactly where the country stands on that front, the India Today Group, in collaboration with data analytics firm How India Lives, embarks on a first-of-its-kind, a pioneering survey across 98 districts in 21 states and 1 union territory, asking 9,188 Indians, not about their income or assets, not about their politics, but about decency, empathy, integrity, their behavior, a measure that we are calling here the gross domestic behavior. All right, so before we get to the methodology of this survey, I want to quickly introduce you to our panelists, our guests this evening. They come from all walks of life and would be speaking to us on how India behaves, on how they perceive India to behave, and how important it is for a sense of civic consciousness to seep in, come in, and make India one of the greatest nations that it has the potential of being. Joining me this evening, Yashovardhan Azad, former IPS, served as a Special Director IB Security and former Central Information Commissioner. Adwaita Kala, author, screenwriter, columnist. Dipankar Gupta, sociologist. Pooja Bedi, actor, wellness entrepreneur. In the studio with me, Saurabh Dwivedi, editor, India Today Hindi. Kaushik Deka, executive editor, India Today magazine. So now let's immediately dive into what the methodology of this pioneering survey was. Let me tell you about how the India Today Group, in collaboration with How India Lives and Cadence International, conducted India's first gross domestic survey. A survey to study social, personal behavior across the country. Like I pointed out earlier, 9,188 respondents were surveyed, 98 districts across 21 states and 1 union territory were covered. 51% male, 49% female respondents were surveyed. 54.4% urban, 45.6% rural respondents. 30 questions regarding civic behavior, public safety, gender attitude, diversity, discrimination were asked. And the results helped us to rank Indian states. We want to say it right on the onset. This is not about, which state leads and which state lags behind. It's just a mirror to society, what we see and what we can learn. I want to, before we get on to our questions, I want to immediately also bring in Kaushik Deka and get an understanding, Kaushik, of what were the biggest challenges. Because at one end, there's a contradiction somewhere. You always understand that civic behavior reflects a blend of awareness, but the contradiction comes into it when most people know that they're doing something wrong, yet they do something wrong. And understandably, in the survey, did they admit that they were doing something wrong, or it's okay for them to do something wrong?
No, the awareness factor was always there. I think when you do such kind of surveys, like we have learned from exit polls on politics also, we should probably carry a truth serum. Because people, whenever they respond, they know what is the right thing to say. For instance, if you see on the questions of litter, or on the questions of husband beating wife, we get the right answer. When I say right answer is that we make that value judgments already, that in a civilized society, it's not correct to litter, or it's not correct to beat your wife or spouse. So in that context, people have given mostly the right answer, what is needed to be done. Biggest challenge was to find out that whether people actually do it, or they are accepting that they do not do the right thing, but they knew what is right. From the answers, we could figure out, as Professor Dipankar Gupta in his column also in the magazine, he has pointed out that the awareness factor is there. The only problem is that whether we can enforce it, whether we have the incentive or encouragement or any binding law to make us do the right thing.
I want to bring in Dipankar Gupta into this conversation, who's a sociologist. Mr. Gupta, it's really interesting, but I would think the biggest challenge of a survey like this would be, would you accept that you're doing something wrong or this, is wrong? Because you'd say it's wrong, and would you actually follow it through?
Well, that was one of the things that I found quite remarkable in the survey, because on most of the tricky issues, as the previous commentator also remarked, the respondents seem to say absolutely the right thing, majority of them at least. And yet, I think in India today, there was a little blurb at the bottom of many of the tables telling us what is the national picture. And when you look at that, you find the great difference between what they say and what actually happens. For example, as you know, when it came to things like reporting on traffic accidents or women should be encouraged to go out and work. On these matters, the respondents seem to agree that, yes, of course, that women should outwork and that traffic accidents should be reported. But as you know, and I know, and the respondents probably also know, that that's not what they actually do. So this discrepancy is very interesting, which is why I argued in my presentation, in my short essay, that the basic civic values are known to people, but they don't implement them for two reasons. And this is across the world, by the way, not just in India. Unless you implement what you ordain in law, this will not happen in practice. Implementation is very important. This is true of Europe, America, any Western European country which we believe is civically very conscious on the civic front. All of those societies reach this level because of very strict and rigorous implementation of the law. And I think that this is where we're lacking. And we shouldn't go about trying to say that we should train people, teach people, and so forth, because we are kind of beating up the wrong kid in school. The real thing is implementation and not what you're told.
Right. Well, all right, so with that caveat, we're going to dive into our first set of questions. I just want to tell our viewers, so what we've done is, broadly, we've divided questions on 4 parameters. Parameter number 1, civic consciousness. So the question that was asked, is it okay to throw litter on the road or in a public space if no public garbage bin is available? Now, the GDB of the nation, where these 21 states and 1 union territory is concerned, seems to suggest that 86% say no. But 14%, it's all right to throw garbage. And let's break it down in terms of microdata. And it's interesting here because 98% of people that were posed this question in Kerala object to throwing litter, while 43% of people who were posed the same question in the state of Punjab said there's nothing wrong with littering the roads. 43%, that's a staggering lot. While 98% in Kerala object to throwing litter on road. And the macro data you have right on your television screen, exactly what Mr. Gupta said is one of the biggest challenges, because most people will say that it's wrong to throw litter, but do they follow through on what they seem to suggest in this survey? 86% doesn't seem translates on what we actually see on roads. Let me quickly go on to our second question. Is it sometimes necessary to pay a bribe to get your work done? Now, the gross domestic behavior of the country seems to suggest that 61% say yes, 38% say no. The micro data in that, 94% in the state of Uttar Pradesh are ready to pay bribe to get work done. It seems to be the only way to get work done, because it's a staggering 94%. But, completely, turn the table on that in the state of Tamil Nadu, 82%, just 10% less than in UP, say that they are opposed to the idea of paying bribes to get work done. Let me take you now to the third question before we cut across to our panelists. If you witness an accident, will you stop to help and call the police or an ambulance? And that's an important one, because, your civic conscience would suggest that, of course. So 88% of India says definitely we'll stop and help, get an ambulance. Only 12% say no. And this is once again the challenge that we were speaking of, because you know that this is something that you should do. Do you do it? Absolutely not with what we see on our roads. But micro data in that, and that's very, very interesting. 99% of people who have posed this question in West Bengal says that they will stop and get help. But a staggering 78% in Odisha are unlikely to stop and help, call the police or an ambulance. And this indeed is worrisome. I want to cut across to our guests. I want to bring in Saurabh Dwivedi, who's sitting with me. Saurabh, अगर आप देखो ये तीनों सवाल, उत्तर प्रदेश में 90% के ऊपर कहते हैं कि भाई ब्राइब देने से कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. वाइल तमिलनाडु में अगर जाओ तो 80% के ऊपर कह रहे हैं कि देखिए बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है, हम क्यों दें ब्राइब.
हम लोगों को स्कूल में सिखा दिया जाता है कि कायदे में रहोगे तो फ़ायदे में रहोगे, लेकिन जैसे हम स्कूल से बाहर घर की और बाहर की दुनिया में दाखिल होते हैं और बचपन से ही, तो एक ब्राइब का सिस्टम है जो हमें इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया जाता है कि अगर तुम ये काम करोगे तो ये मिलेगा, नहीं करोगे तो नहीं मिलेगा. खूबसूरती में उसको रिवॉर्ड सिस्टम कह दिया जाता है. और जब हम बाहर जाकर देखते हैं तो हमें लगता है कि वो सारे लोग मूर्ख करार दिए जाते हैं जो लाइन में लगते हैं. हमें वो जुमले उछाल दिए जाते हैं कि लाइन में लगोगे तो लगे ही रहोगे. और फिर सेलिब्रेशन शुरू होता है जुगाड़ का. अरे साहब बड़ा जुगाड़ू आदमी है, देखिए दाएं बाएं से करके खिड़की से हाथ डाल के फॉर्म ले आया, बाबू को ये दे के, कंपाउंडर को वो दे के. पहला इसका जो एक इंडिकेटर है वो ये है कि चूंकि रेगुलर आपके जो डिलीवरी सिस्टम है वो फेल हो रहे हैं. आपको पता है कि लाइन में लग के आपको टिकट नहीं मिलेगा, लाइन में लग के आप ट्रेन का इंतज़ार करोगे तो कोई धक्के आके आगे चला जाएगा. तो इसलिए लोगों को समझ में आ गया है. दूसरी चीज़, एक सोसाइटी के तौर पे, खास तौर पे उत्तर भारत में हमने देखा है शक्ति की पूजा, नोशन ऑफ पावर. आप ताकतवर हो तो आपको किसी लाइन में नहीं लगना है, आपके लिए ट्रैफिक रोक दिया जाएगा, आपके लिए हर जगह वीआईपी सुविधा है. तो लोगों को लगता है कि वो शक्ति हम तभी एक्सपीरियंस कर सकते हैं जब हमारा काम फटाक से हो जाए. 3 दिन का इंतजार क्यों करना है. तो वो शक्ति का नोशन, सिविक जो फैसिलिटीज़ हैं उनका फेल्योर, ये 2 बड़ी चीज़ें हैं जो मुझे लगता है कि इस चीज़ को बहुत ज़्यादा ट्रिगर करती हैं. और जो सबसे बड़ी चीज़ है वो ये है कि जानना और मानना अलग अलग है.
वही जो हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे.
तो जानते सब हैं, मानते
कितने हैं वो देखना,
क्योंकि घर के लेवल पे ये बहुत एक्सेप्टेबल है. जब तक आप डायरेक्ट हिट नहीं हो रहे हैं, आपको पता चले कि आपका बच्चा गया और उसने दाएं बाएं से करके ये काम करवा लिया, तो ये नहीं कहा जाएगा कि तुम दाएं बाएं के चक्कर में क्यों उड़ा रहे हो, पर साहब बड़ा स्मार्ट लड़का है, देखिए कितना जुगाड़ू है. तो ये जो सेलिब्रेशन ऑफ जुगाड़ है उसके चक्कर में शॉर्टकट. और जहां तक कूड़े की बात है, सेंस ऑफ बिलोंगिंग नहीं है. हमारा घर साफ रहे, हमारे घर के ठीक बाहर की सड़क, पुलिया, नाली वो गंदी रहे, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. ये बात और है कि थोड़ी देर पहले हम चौराहे पे पुतला जला के और नारा लगा के आए हैं कि हम एक महान राष्ट्र थे, और हमने सुबह ही हिस्ट्री की क्लास में पढ़ा है कि इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन में नालियां ढकी होती थी, स्नानागार सार्वजनिक होते थे. वो बात और है कि हम जब कभी ऐसे तालाब में जाते हैं तो डिटर्जेंट छूट जाए तो छोड़ के चले जाते हैं. तो वो एक
पिकनिक पे जाते हैं तो अगर whatever that you have on your picnic, you leave it right there. But Pooja Bedi, I want to bring you in on this, because another interesting observation that can be made even with the first 3 questions that we've seen, 2 out of those seemingly suggest a stark difference, or what many don't want to acknowledge anymore is the north-south divide. And there seems to be one clearly, because look at, is it okay to throw litter on roads? 98% of people in Kerala object to it, while 43% of people in Punjab say it's okay, no big deal.
I was a part of the Versova beach cleaning movement. We had God knows how many millions of tons of trash on our beach, right? It was mentioned worldwide. I think President Clinton at that time made note of it. Afroz Shah and his team, including all of us, have been down on Versova beach. It was the largest historic beach cleanup in the history of the world, I think. And what happened? Promptly, the trash is back. It's a constant process of people throwing. There's, as much as you may try to generate awareness, until we have the infrastructure in place and penalties in place, you're not going to see a difference. If I look down, I'm right on the sea face in Versova. I can see the beach below me. I can see all the hawkers who are setting up their lovely stalls every evening. And every morning when I go down to the beach, I see a litter of plates, of bottles, of cans, of all of that lying on the beach. And there's no trash can available inside. Now, you know that this is a place that people come to every single evening where the hawkers will be at. It should be something that the hawkers are penalized for if they don't clean up after their guests once the guests leave. We have to have some sort of systems put in place. And
some sort of systems where deterrence is concerned. But will deterrence come from a fine, or will deterrence come from education? Let me quickly, yes, make your point, Pooja.
Education can be a deterrent. Fine can be a deterrent. Education is the way forward, but people need to implement that. Now, the point is also this, that a lot of it, what you've discussed, comes at the cost of sometimes personal harassment. For example, stopping on the road for someone who has an accident. The first thing is, nahi, hum phas jayenge iske andar. And that's come because of history that has shown that in such cases, people do get dragged into it by the police, harassed by the police. And you have cases where people feel like, oh shit, why did I extend myself for support? My life has become a living nightmare, right? If those processes were made easier for good Samaritans to actually come forward, things would change. I remember Farah Khan, the jewelry designer, and me were in Goa. And as we were driving past at night, there was a horrific accident just next to us. And this woman was slung off a bike. We didn't think twice. I mean, we jumped out of the car. We literally picked her up. The locals were around. They said, nahi, police aa jayega. I said, no, we're going to take her to the hospital. She's bleeding from the head. We put her in the car. There was blood all over my car. We took her to the hospital because we didn't think twice. But not everybody feels that way. Not everybody is trained to react that way.
Good on you. Good on you, Pooja, to give that example. I just want to quickly get in a couple more questions. We're going to try and pack in as much. And I will bring in Adwaita and Mr. Azad into this conversation. The other question that was asked, under the civic consciousness banner, are you comfortable paying or receiving cash for buying or selling property to avoid tax? Now, across India, and this is very interesting because 52% says yes, 42% said no. And let's break that down. 77% in Madhya Pradesh approve of cash transactions to avoid paying tax, while 57% in Maharashtra are against this idea. Let me quickly move on to the other question that was posed. Is it acceptable to travel on public transport without a ticket or without paying the fare? Now, 14% said yes, 85% said no. So there's a staggering percentage which agrees, or at least seem to suggest that they know it's not the right thing to do, but it's not something that we actually see transcend on our public transport. Now, micro data in that, 99% in people in Delhi disapprove of ticketless travel, while 54% in Punjab are okay with it. Let me quickly bring in one more and we'll cut across to our panelists. Is it fine to tamper with electricity meters to reduce bills? 10% says yes, 87% says no. The micro data in that, 98% in Kerala are against tampering with electricity meters to reduce bills. Kerala seemingly coming up as one of the most civic conscious states that we can see, while 17% in Assam are okay with it. What's wrong? Thoda chori kar liya electricity, koi problem nahi hai. Kaushik is smiling because it's his state, but this is I don't want to get into that. But Adwaita, I want to bring you back in, into this conversation.
Saurabh will have to leave.
Saurabh will have to leave because Saurabh is from UP. So I'm very interested in Haryana because I am from Haryana. But Adwaita, one thing I think what we've seen in the number of questions that we've asked, along with what we already discussed, that most people understand it's wrong. How many of them follow it through is the big question. And that was a challenge in this survey. But one thing which is very clear, that there is this north-south divide, Adwaita. Most of, at least in civic consciousness, states which are leading the charge are coming in from the south. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, examples of that.
Right. The most obvious reason would be literacy, right? Because literacy levels, awareness levels are probably higher back in the south than they are in the north. So that would be the most obvious answer. But I think one other thing is plain and simple Bharatiya hypocrisy. Do as I say, but don't do as I do. And I think that permeates into all aspects of public behavior. I'm also with Pooja on the fact that you have to have some sort of penalty in place, fine system in place. I remember I went to Singapore for the first time last year, and I was so impressed. I had never wanted to go there because back in the day, a close friend of mine, her friend was the boy who was spanked for spitting chewing gum on the road.
Right.
And horrified by that. And I said, this is one country I never want to go to. But it was a stopover flight last year, and I went, and I was so impressed with the way people follow traffic rules, with the cleanliness levels, with just the sheer discipline and courtesy. I mean, senior citizens there are taxi drivers because they don't want to sit at home and want to do something and get out and stay active. So I found this so interesting that, you know, even though it's a rule-based society and we're not used to those many rules in India, it works and it can work.
I need to now power through some of the questions, especially in the first segment. But Mr. Azad, I want to quickly get you in before we go, and we're going to take 6 straight questions after that. But what is the deterrent, Mr. Azad? Because, you know, there's multiple theories, multiple point of views. Education seems to be right on top. Because if it was just fines, if it was, you know, just fines as a deterrent and punishment and reward, then you know, the kind of stark difference that we possibly see between the South and the North wouldn't be coming through like this.
Deterrence is not the only solution. In fact, Preeti, first of all, congratulations. This is one of those rare, relevant programs on a national TV. So congratulations for this. I mean, most of them, you know what I mean to talk about.
Now, you know, maybe we'll factor it into the civic consciousness, another chapter on that when it comes down to the media consciousness. But go ahead, sir.
I'm in Madhya Pradesh right now. I'm in Bhopal. I have just finalized a deal. And believe me, that it's totally in white. Now, it depends how you've been brought up. I know in Madhya Pradesh, a lot of cash transactions go on, but it is also because of the excessive stamp duties and because of absolutely impractical kind of government rules and restrictions and policies. That's number one. Number two, as I said, deterrence is not really an issue here. In disciplined democracies, this is expected. In schools today, even the parents don't ask the children about civic responsibilities, but they ask about marks. They ask about the uniforms. They ask about their drama, homework, etc. So today you have people, you know, rattoing things like Vasco da Gama's arrival, Columbus, and things like that. But even today, you see people not crossing the road properly. I remember staying in Pandara Road, where I saw the children of the central school walking on the road while I was on the pavement and trying to tell those children, please walk on this present path. So there is definitely a divide between the North and the South. And I have no hesitation in saying the South is definitely more disciplined. It is also
good on you. Kaushik wants to come in, but Kaushik, I want to quickly need to head through the next, 6 questions. But good on you and congratulations on your new property in Bhopal. It's a lovely, stunning city. Let me quickly move on to the other questions that were posed in the civic behavior chapter. Do you care about climate change? Now, one would think it's a largely urban question. Now, 69% of India says yes, we care about climate change. 20% says no. In which is very interesting, 93% of people in Haryana say they care about climate change. Now, I don't know, I want to ask Kaushik, were they all in Gurgaon that the interviewers went to?
And not the Parali burning areas.
Exactly, and not the Parali burning areas, because it's interesting. I take a lot of pride because I come from Haryana. 93% in Haryana say they care about climate change. 37% in Uttar Pradesh says what climate change? No such concern. Now, you know, this is where climate change is concerned. The other question that it was asked, do you think there should be a ban on the sale of tobacco products? 84% of people in India say yes. 16% say no. And what's really interesting in all of this, because 84% say yes, and there's a micro data that about 63% of Indians use some form of tobacco. So that's a part of the 84% who wants a ban, and 16% say no. Look at the micro data. 96% people in Tamil Nadu want a ban on tobacco products, while only 34% in Gujarat oppose the ban. Let me move on to alcohol. Do you think there should be a ban on the sale of alcohol? Alcohol has been very, very contentious in states, very political as well. When you look at the state of Gujarat, Bihar, 82% say yes. 82% of India actually wants a ban on alcohol. You know, I don't believe this at all. And 17% say no. The micro data in that seems to suggest that 91% in West Bengal want a ban on alcohol, while 42% do not want a ban on alcohol or against such bans. Now, the other question, has UPI or digital payments replaced cash as your preferred mode for day-to-day transactions? 76% of India says yes, it has. 18% say no. Delhi is leading in that prefers digital payments, and understandably, because it's more savvy. Now, the other question, would you be comfortable approaching your sarpanch or a corporator to address your grievances? 79% say yes, 20% say no. 93% in Odisha are comfortable going to their local body chief, be it a sarpanch or a corporator. 65% in Karnataka have no faith in their local body heads. Interesting. Now, is it all right, and this is a pet peeve of many who travel, by air or in public transport, is it all right to play music on a mobile phone without headphones in public spaces like buses, parks, cafes, public transport? 19% of India says yes. 81% of India understands that, it's not good civic behavior, says no. However, 95% of Odisha opposes not using a headphone. 37% in Assam, I'm not pointing towards Dhaka, are fine with playing music without them.
Very musical state.
All right, so, I want to get in all our panelists once. We put out the 6 questions, and Kaushik, you wanted to quickly come in and make a point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the crime and punishment issue here, that we know what to do, but we do not do. So in our edit meetings, Mr. Puri keeps talking about one particular story. And before that, if you have heard of this, probably, that Bollywood filmmakers often talk about that if the film is liked by the kids, then it will become a hit. You probably have heard this theory. So Mr. Puri recalls an incident in 1980s when he traveled to China. So whenever adult people, they would spit on the street, the kids will come and circle that area and shame that adult. So he first-hand witnessed that. So, and he understood that this is a very innovative technique, and how kids were well aware of that thing. Later on, I Googled after I heard that story, and I found that actually the government of China, they had enlisted the services of these school children to do that. So probably we could utilize our next generation to educate what we have learned or what we should unlearn.
Saurabh, you want to weigh in on what you've seen in terms of behavior right now, civic behavior?
देखिए, मैं उत्तर प्रदेश से आता हूं, जिसका बार-बार जिक्र आया, और उत्तर प्रदेश में जिनके ऊपर कानून बनाने की जिम्मेदारी है, विधायक, उनको बाकायदा सीसीटीवी पर विद इन द विधानसभा प्रीमाइस थूकते हुए गुटखा और पान मसाला पाया गया, और स्पीकर को अपने डायस से उनको शेम करना पड़ा कि आपका नाम मुझे पता है, आप आकर मिल लीजिए। और उसके बाद एक फंक्शन में स्पीकर मुझे मिले, मैंने पूछा कौन थे वो एमएलए, तो उन्होंने नाम बताया, फिर बोले कि वो आए, बोले साहब किसी को बताइएगा मत। तो एक तरफ तो शेम इतनी है और दूसरी तरफ हरकतें ऐसी हैं। ये एक मेंबर ऑफ लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली के मेंबर का हाल है। ओवरऑल मुझे लगता है इस डेटा को ऐसे भी पढ़ना चाहिए कि गुजरात के लोग टोबैको के बिना इसलिए नहीं रह पाते हैं क्योंकि उनको लिकर के बिना नहीं रहना है। तो आपको ये भी देखना होगा कि सोसाइटी में लिकर का कंजम्पशन कितना एक्सेप्टेबल है, पॉइंट 1, और विमेन पार्टिसिपेंट कितना टोबैको कंज्यूम करते हैं, क्योंकि दैट वेरीज। आप यूपी के एरियाज में जाएंगे, रूरल एरियाज में जाएंगे, वहाँ पे विमेन का टोबैको कंजम्पशन इन वन फॉर्म और अदर, खासतौर पे जो इकोनॉमिकली वीकर सेक्शन है, जो वर्किंग क्लास में है, वो वहाँ पे कॉमन है। और जहाँ पे एक मझोला ऐसा वर्ग है जहाँ पे महिलाएं बाहर नहीं जा रही हैं, वहाँ पे वो ज़्यादा एक ऐसी पोजीशन ले पाती कि नहीं साहब ये नहीं होना चाहिए। बिहार में आप जाएंगे, वो अपनी फीमेल कॉन्स्टिट्यूंसी को एड्रेस करते हैं नीतीश कुमार, इसलिए उन्होंने बैन लगाया। वो कितना एप्लीकेबल है नहीं है सबको दिखता है, पर एक किस्म की हिपोक्रेसी भी है। आपसे कोई पूछे आके पब्लिकली 10 लोगों के बीच में कि यार कभी पैसे दे के काम करवाया आपको? हाँ यार कभी कभी करवाया है। शराब पिए कभी? आप देखोगे बगल में चाचा के दोस्त, नहीं शराब नहीं पीते हम। तो इन सवालों के जवाब यूपी में आप सिगरेट पी रहे हो तो आप बुरे हो, गुटखा खा रहे हो तो हाँ चलेगा गुटखा, कोई दिक्कत नहीं।
Fair point. Mr. Gupta, you want to weigh in on this because it's very interesting. And also with what you touched on right in the beginning, through the course of the last 15 minutes, two panelists have said, and good on them, but that is also the nature of India, where you have Ms. Bedi who said that I helped somebody, I stopped and took that person to the hospital. You have Mr. Azad who says, listen, my transaction in Bhopal has happened completely in white. So there is a sense where most of us would want to project that we're doing the right thing, but very few of us actually do. I'm not saying anything with Mr. Bedi or Mr. Azad here.
Well, you see, it's nature of the beast, because the way you ask questions makes it almost impossible for anyone to say the wrong thing. We all know what is right. So if you ask somebody, do you want to break the law? I can't imagine anybody saying, yes, I do. And therefore, your question like, will you travel ticketless? Of course, they'll say, no, we won't travel ticketless. Will you pay black money to buy property? Of course, they'll say no. I mean, how can you imagine anybody would say yes? But the fact of the matter is that most people do, or large numbers of people do that. What is tricky, however, is questions regarding littering in the streets. When you find so many people saying littering is wrong, and yet they litter freely, obviously there's a big disconnect between what they say and what they do, which is why I emphasized earlier, it's important to observe the law and have punishments for those who break it. You see, The other thing which impressed me a lot in the survey was not what people said and what percentage, because as I told you earlier, when you ask a question of a person whom you hardly know, that person will give you the best possible answer. But what I found interesting was a great degree of unanimity between men and women, even on tricky issues like whether or not they should be allowed to spend their own money, or whether or not men should take the final decision, or even regarding education and employment. Here I found that the concurrence or the similarity between men and women was quite striking. I would have thought they'd be greater discord in their answers. The other thing which I found interesting was urban and rural answers were by and large the same. Very little variation between urban respondents and rural respondents, which probably indicates that India is getting more and more uniform in terms of its urban spread. And villages too are becoming increasingly urban in their everyday lives. And of course, the final thing is what I began with, that is a great difference between what people say they do and what they do. And in all social sciences, we are always taught to pay great attention to this divergence. And I would like that to be emphasized. And therefore, we should think again and again how important it is to implement the law and not make exceptions to VIPs and other such, celebrated characters.
Mr. Gupta, just stay on with us. I'm going to cut across to Ms. Bedi and bring in Adwaita as well. But right before that, I'd like to give out, we've tabulated all the data where civic behavior in India is concerned, cut across 21 states plus a union territory. We've taken out the top 20. Now, one needs to look at it from a lens of what we can improve, a mirror to our society, and not that one state has bettered the other or overemphasize the north-south divide. But it'd be interesting. And some of, if you look at the results, are a tad surprising. So where civic behavior is concerned, and Pooja Bedi, I'll bring you in on that. The glue that holds the society together, shaping the everyday narrative interactions that define the quality of public life, respecting public property, extending helpful hand in times of crisis, all of that. Now, through these 12 design questions, we have tabulated the gross domestic behavior of India, and let's bring out the list. The findings reveal clearly a complex tapestry of behavioral patterns across states, illustrating both encouraging trends and concerning disparities in public conduct. And this is the list on your television screen. Tamil Nadu emerges, now a drum roll there, as a paragon of civic virtue, securing the #1 rank, followed closely by West Bengal, Odisha, while Punjab is at the bottom, possibly one of the most truthful, like Kaushik Deka says, when it comes down to civic behavior, farak hi nahi padta hai. This is what we are and this is what we are saying. Now, the stark contrast, of course, underscores, what we've discussed, regional variations and how India navigates their civic responsibilities. But take a look at that. Very, very interesting. Adwaita Kala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Odisha, in terms of civic behavior, right on top, while you have Punjab, Gujarat, Assam, right at the bottom, a mirror to society, and then, of course, you know, all the states add up there.
You know, one of my home states, Preeti, Uttarakhand, is at number 8, and Himachal follows right behind it at number 9. And one thing I want to share is like the demographic makeup. Most of the homes, especially in the hill areas, they have one member or more in the armed forces. So there is a sense of discipline which kind of permeates into the social structures as well as the family dynamics. So I think that is reflective in these figures right there. So it's very interesting to me. The other thing is, you know, with just very quickly, I think the important thing with civic behavior is community organizing. The moment you get into a system where there is legitimate community organizing and that's sustainable, you know, like the Warsaw beach cleanup or having marshals who help kids cross the road, and these are community-driven exercises, I think you'll see a turn in civic behavior.
All right, okay, a turn in civic behavior. You know what you touched on Uttarakhand and Himachal, but it's very interesting because, you know, wait for our other surveys to kick in when it comes down to gender, religion. Very, very interesting turn that a state of Uttarakhand has taken. But, you know, we'll come down to that.
Here we cannot say there is a south-north divide,
exactly.
because Andhra and Karnataka, they are not doing very well.
They are with Uttar Pradesh and Punjab.
Pooja, you want to comment on on what you see in terms of on the barometer of civic consciousness, where each state stands in India?
Well, I mean, I see India as a whole, right? And I see the problems around us wherever we go. I've sold 3 properties in the last 1 year, and I can tell you it's so difficult finding somebody who's willing to give you full white. You know, you search and you search and you search and you search and you search, you know, and then finally you have to probably lower your prices, what we did, in order to be able to have a full white transaction, right? So these are the realities of what we face. Full stop. You know, you could be in any state. These are the realities, because maybe the taxation is too punishing. Maybe the government needs to be looking at, you know, making enabling systems in certain ways that people, you know, feel rewarded for transactions and for contributing to the economy. But the level at which you're taxed, the level at which you pay taxes, direct and indirect, you know, it's almost punishing to be an entrepreneur and to earn money. Again, coming back to Warsaw Beach, you know, the BMC had declared it to be a defecation-free city, you know. Every morning I go down to my beach. Every morning I see people shitting on the beach. You know, in front of me, they're shitting on the beach. There's large bits of shit as you're dodging them as you're walking down the beach. You know, if the government has its head in the sand and will not create, there's a chawl right next to me, you know, so if the government doesn't go out there and actually put out, you know, toilets for them and put those things into place, we will never be defecation free. What are people supposed to do with the call of nature, right? So you need to put systems in place.
I'm really short of time. I need to quickly move on to our next segment. A quick break and we're back with our public safety segment. You're watching the stunning results of India Today's pioneering survey on how India behaves, the gross domestic behavior. We gave you the results of India's civic consciousness. We rated it, but let's move on right now on where India's states stand when it comes down to public safety. Moving on from civic behavior to public safety, and we asked a set of 6 questions. In that, the first question that was posed is teasing or harassment of women in public spaces a frequent problem in your area? 42% of India says yes, it is a frequent problem in our area. 56% says no, there is no harassment of women in public spaces. 17% in Tamil Nadu reported teasing. 79% in Karnataka accepted presence of this social menace. Now, this is the micro number to that. Let's move to our second question that was asked. Do you feel safe using public transportation such as buses, metros, local trains in your city? 86% of India, and that's heartening to note, seems to suggest, yes, we feel safe. However, 14% says no. It would be interesting to dive deep on what is the gender breakup of that 14%, which says no, they don't feel safe taking public transport. When you break it down further, and it is something which comes up a lot for yours, and I can be the prime example of that, because when I was in Maharashtra, Mumbai, I felt very safe. 89% in Maharashtra say they feel safe taking public transport. 27% in Punjab feel otherwise. You know, interesting question. A gender breakup on that would be all the more interesting. The other question that was posed, are there areas in your neighborhood where you feel unsafe? 37% say yes, 56% say no, 30% in Uttar Pradesh feel unsafe in certain areas of their neighborhood, 73%. And that's a staggering number, which seemed to suggest in Kerala, people there feel safe in their neighborhood. If you witness a violent crime in your area, moving on to our next question, would you feel safe reporting it to the police? Practically, does the policing administration inspire enough confidence in you to go and report a crime? 84% of India says yes, 16% says no. The micro number in that is very interesting because 95% in Tamil Nadu said that they would feel safe reporting a crime. Are you okay with the presence of stray dogs around your house or in your locality? Stray dogs have become a huge menace of late. Many in our neighborhoods can vouch for that. 40% say yes, 60% say no. 96% of Kerala doesn't want stray dogs around. And Kerala, viewers, of late, if you've been watching the news, has been a state which has seen a lot of attacks by stray dogs. 64% in Uttarakhand don't mind at all. Do people routinely flout traffic rules in the area where you live in? 49% say yes, 47% say no. 68% in Assam say traffic rule violations are not regular in their areas. 89% of Karnataka says it's very common. Traffic rule violations happen all the time. All right, at the back of these 6 questions, I want to quickly cut across. First, I just would like to bring in the 2 women on the panel, Adwaita, Kala, and all right, we don't have Adwaita. Pooja Bedi can come in, and I want to go to Saurabh Dwivedi as well. Because, Pooja, what's really deeply interesting in all of this is that if there was a gender breakup, especially how safe you feel taking public transport, is there harassment of women? Because, you know, the yes number would have a large amount of women seeming to suggest it.
Well, I would say certainly as a woman, I don't feel as safe when I go to Delhi. I don't feel safe with something about the way they look at you. It's something about just, you know, I guess how much media attention is drawn to the fact about, you know, the level of crime against women in, you know, in those areas. In Bombay, however, it's a very different situation because we're very crowded, you know, there's a lot of population density here. In addition to that, traffic moves very slowly. No one can just put you in a car and kidnap you and take off into different directions, you know. So on multiple levels, also the people, the cosmopolitan nature of the city, I feel extraordinarily safe in Bombay. I feel extraordinarily safe in Goa, for that matter, you know, which I travel to very often. As a woman, I can understand the concerns about public safety and public transport. And I certainly, you know, I mean, the statistics are there for you to see. And, you know, and therefore one needs to do something about it in terms of, there's a friend of mine, for example, has this very lovely app called Free, P-H-R-E-E. And basically what that does is women rate their areas in terms of safety, which is so interesting because you walk into a place and you see that, oh my God, I don't feel safe here. The parking is too dark, or the crowd in here isn't good, and you rate it as unsafe and you walk away.
That's very helpful, Pooja.
You know, so we need apps like that to come into the picture. We need more
along with policing, along with, you know, instilling confidence.
AI can play a very big role in this. You know, AI plays a very big role in bringing safety features to women, whether they're within the house or outside the house, reporting structures, etc., etc.
You know, while public safety is a lot about women, it's not just solely about women, especially where you have that kind of confidence to go and report a crime. We've given you the questions there. What we've done, we've tabulated the data where public safety is concerned, not just about crime statistics, it's just about the feeling of how safe people feel in everyday lives. Let's bring you a little drum roll there. The top 20 when it comes down to how safe people feel in India regards to the states that they live in. Kerala leads the nation in public safety, followed very closely by Himachal, by Odisha, while Uttar Pradesh occupies the bottom position, a stark reminder clearly of the regional variations again. Once again, you know, with what we started off seeming to suggest there's this stark, you know, south-north divide, that really doesn't seem to exist if you look at the the statistics right there. Karnataka, Andhra, even when it comes down to public safety, are the laggards of sorts. In Kerala, Himachal, Odisha, West Bengal, Maharashtra, Haryana, all are actually leading the pack. Saurabh, agar aap isko dekhte hain, Uttar Pradesh right at the bottom. Though I will actually say, for a woman, I felt safe in Mumbai and not very safe in maybe in Amritsar, Punjab, as reporting as a journalist.
मैं 2-3 बातें कहूँगा क्विकली. पूजा जो बोल रही थी, मेरी थिएटर की एक दोस्त मुंबई से दिल्ली आई, हमारे घर खाना खाने आई, गर्मियों का वक्त था, दोपहर के वक्त लंच के लिए आई, ऑटो रिक्शा से आई. तो मैंने कहा आपने कैब क्यों नहीं ली? तो बोली ऑटो रिक्शा में कभी भी कूद के भाग सकते हैं ना. मैंने कहा मतलब? बोली नहीं, दिल्ली है ना, तो पता नहीं कि कौन कैसे बिहेव करेगा, तो ऑटो रिक्शा खुला है दोनों तरफ से. आई वॉज शॉक्ड टू हियर दिस, बट दिस इज द रियलिटी. बसेस की अगर हम बात करें, इट्स अ कैच-22 सिचुएशन, स्पेशली फॉर विमेन. बहुत भीड़ है तो कोई आपको गलत ढंग से टच करेगा, उस भीड़ का फायदा उठाएगा. कितनी सारी कलीग्स ने, दोस्तों ने ये एक्सपीरियंसेस शेयर किए हैं. बहुत कम भीड़ है तो आपको रिस्क है, लेकिन आपको हमेशा ये लगता है पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट है तो रिलेटिवली सेफ होगा. तो ये एक बहुत मशक्कत रहती है. दूसरा, एंड टू एंड पॉइंट कनेक्टिविटी नहीं है, क्योंकि आपको बस स्टैंड से उतर के जो वॉक करना है तो हर जगह रोशनी नहीं है. कहीं पे स्ट्रे डॉग्स हैं, कहीं पर इंसान की देह में डॉग्स हैं जो आप पे झपटने के लिए तैयार बैठे हैं. सस्ते किस्म के, महंगे किस्म के नशे. और वो इसलिए देखिए, यूपी इसमें बॉटम पे है. किसी के भी दिमाग में अगर ये है कि हम कुछ भी करके बच निकलेंगे
जी,
तो वो सेंस ऑफ रिस्पांसिबिलिटी खत्म हो जाती है. दे विल मैनेज.
But also, Saurabh, इसमें there is another point on whether somebody has that kind of confidence to go to the police. यूपी उसमें भी सबसे कम पर है.
जी, क्योंकि जैसे ही आप शिकायत लेके जाते हैं किसी भी राज्य की पुलिस के पास, आप खासतौर पे ये उत्तर भारत के मैं तजुर्बे बता रहा हूँ, पुलिस का पहला होता है आर यू श्योर यू वांट टू फाइल अ कंप्लेन. क्या आप बहुत श्योर हैं? एक तरफ वो ये कहते हैं कि एनसीआरबी के डेटा में कि हम रजिस्ट्रेशन ज्यादा कर रहे हैं एफआईआर की, पर वो शिकायत ले लेते हैं, ठीक है जांच करेंगे. और ये महिलाओं के खिलाफ अपराध वाले मामले में भी है, आपको पुश करना पड़ेगा, या उन्हें लगेगा कि बहुत ग्रेव कंसर्न है या सोशल मीडिया पे बहुत ज्यादा बवाल हो सकता है, देन दे विल इमीडिएटली. यस, दैट इज वन. एक चीज जो मैं ऐड करना चाहता हूँ, ओवरऑल इस पूरे सिविक बिहेवियर पे बात हो रही है, अलग अलग पैरामीटर्स पे. हमारी सेंस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी बहुत मिसप्लेस्ड है. हमारी कास्ट पे किसी ने रिमार्क कर दिया, सबको गुस्सा आ जाएगा. हमारे रिलीजन पे किसी ने कुछ को बोल दिया, गुस्सा आ जाएगा. कभी कभी स्टेट के लेवल पे भी एज अ सिटीजन हमारे साथ जो लगातार नाइंसाफियां हो रही हैं, हमें सुरक्षित पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट नहीं मिल रहा है, हमारी एफआईआर लॉन्च नहीं हो रही हैं, कोई कूड़ा फेंक रहा है, इस पे हमें गुस्सा नहीं आता, क्योंकि हम कभी भी एक सिटीजन के तौर पे अपने आप को आइडेंटिफाई नहीं करते, एसोसिएट नहीं करते हैं.
Ji, Kaushik wants to come in, and I definitely want to get in Mr. Azad, especially by public safety is concerned. But viewers, now over the last, the course of 2 days, you've had an understanding on 4 basic parameters on where India stands in terms of behavior. Be it civic health of a country, where is civic consciousness, be it public safety. We've spoken about gender, how people perceive gender parity, on religion, tolerance, and the final tally overall position after assessing the response on all categories: civic behavior, public safety, gender attitudes, diversity, discrimination. This composite ranking represents now 21 states, and we're putting it there on all 4 parameters on how they have performed at the back of 30 questions that were posed to them. States that gave more socially positive responses, indicating better practices or attitudes, or at least understanding that these are better practices and attitudes, so therefore they need to say that. They got higher scores. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal leading in all categories right at the top. Gujarat, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh at the bottom. And then you can see all the other states coming in. And in this possibly overall picture, you do see a north-south divide of sorts. But very interesting, if you look at the data, which has been gauged on all 4 parameters, whether it be religious tolerance, gender parity, civic health, civic consciousness, public safety. I want to bring in Yashovardhan Azad because, while we're giving out these numbers, Yashovardhan Azad, it's a mirror. This is not, one state is so much better than, say, the other state. Kerala right on top, Uttar Pradesh is terrible at the bottom. It's not so much as that, but it's a mirror to society on areas where we can improve. Possibly some states have been a lot more honest than the others. But this is where we stand right now. What is your biggest takings? What is your understanding?
First, I would like to say, Preeti, that every zone, every area, or every city has its shadow centers, shadow zones, which are, unsafe, which even men would like to, venture into. That's one. Number two, I really want to maintain that today, as far as the women's issues are concerned, police has been reacting better and better. And I'll tell you another thing, that when it's important for a woman's family to go to the police, they have gone, registered cases, and have got relief too. But certainly that fear is there, which remains regarding going to any government offices. As far as the ranking goes, I must say that this could also have to do something with the male patriarchy, which we talk about, or the feudal system. So you see, Uttar Pradesh and the other states where the feudal hierarchy is very strongly maintained. Whereas in places like Kerala, etc., where education is very high and the feudal practices are much less. So this could be...
Right. I want to bring in Kaushik because I'm totally out of time. And Kaushik, you wanted to weigh in because we've already discussed, what's the way out? How can we better our own social, civic health?
In India Today column, Bikram Singh, former DGP of Uttar Pradesh, the state Saurabh belongs to, and it's a very contentious state, he mentioned a very important point that the laws are there, enforcement is also there, you can increase the efficiency of police forces, all these things are fine, but the trust, people's trust will come back when there is a better communication, and this cannot happen overnight or through certain enforcement deals. So that effort should be collective from the political leadership to the civil society leadership, that people start believing in the system. So the safety concern is always there because people do not have the faith, as you rightly mentioned, that as you rightly said, that if I do not have the fear that if I break the law something will happen to me, then I'll continue breaking that law, and that is what is happening in most states. And Preeti, to answer your questions, you queried about whether women saw it differently and traveling in public transport. Interestingly, in the survey, we did rural, urban, and gender divide. But in most cases, we found that they are similar. Means the responses are quite similar. So there is not much variation.
We're going to, I'm sorry, Kaushik, I'm coming in. We're going to end on that. We've completely run out of time. But this is an endeavor we're going to carry forward. How India behaves, the gross domestic behavior. We're going to continue to gauge it on the metrics of how each state performed by asking them questions. Look at it not from the purview of my state is better than yours, but a mirror to our society, because we might become an economic superpower. Till the time our civic consciousness is developed as good as our economic path ahead, we're not going to be a superpower. Just with that, thank you all our guests for joining us. And that's it, the gross domestic behavior of the country right in front of you.